Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 179, Woman. What Lei Jing had said about Bai Cha being a promiscuous whore in Gedal was in fact, a lie. That's because Bai Cha had never set foot in Gedal. She was in full bloom for a very brief period of time, with half of her life spent in Duan province. 30 years ago, when the king of wolves, Xiao Fangxiu, was still herding horses at Loxia Pass with a stalk of grass in his mouth, and when Amuir was still an eagle slave along the banks of the Hashi River, Bai Cha had already been sold to Duan province. The thought that they could later go on to be capable of making waves and stirring up a storm several years later had never crossed the boys' minds, but the girl was already well aware of the kind of path she was about to embark on. Qiang was Bai Cha's madam. She was in the prime of her life then, with twin voluptuous peaks which was as fair as snow when she bent over. Even just by leaning against the door, she could command all the attention of the men passing by. A woman with a sharp, discerning eye for discovering gems, she picked Bai Cha out from a bunch of girls and raised her. Back then, there was no Libei and the north was dominated by the Han-Shi tribe. The two sides of Duan province were surrounded by enemies, and it was very close to the various Biancha tribes, which lay east of Hashi River. It was here that the bandits found a way to make money. They snatched women from decent families and conspired with the Yamen to forge household registrations, then sold a portion of them to the pleasure houses in Duan province. The rest were taken to the other side of the Hashi River, where they were sold to the various tribes of Biancha. Things were tough for Qiang's business, and being crowded out by the competitors in the same trade irked her. She used half of her life savings to feed and train these girls. She invited a teacher to teach them the four arts of music, wiki, calligraphy, and painting in the hope that she could hold her head high when they were ready to serve patrons. Of the girls, she was the most exacting of Bai Cha, and true to her expectations, Bai Cha did not let her down a few years later when she went on to become the number one in the establishment. Do you know what kind of people had the highest number of deaths on the banks of the Hashi River at that time? Haragu waited for a moment, but no one responded to him, so he answered his own question. It's the women. When the bandits were at their most rampant, their numbers could hit nearly 10,000. They wandered on both ends of the Hashi River, exchanging women for money. Even if the abducted women managed to escape by sheer luck, there was no way they could ever return home again. Later, the various tribes threw us to Gedal. Haragu said. At the same time, they also cast away a few women who were no longer needed. Sometimes, these women would walk back on foot, but it was difficult for them to be accepted back by their parents. These women had lost the proof of their household registrations, which made it difficult for them to return to Great Zhou. Even if they managed to, their parents and siblings would refuse to open the door and welcome them back. They were better off dead than alive. If they were by any chance pregnant, then they were guilty of the most heinous crimes. Not only would they be beaten up upon returning to their hometowns, but they would also even be burned to death. Haragu pursed his parched lips and said, "My mother was a girl from Den province. She was sold by the bandits to the Qingsha tribe, and from then on, she became a captive of the Qingsha tribe's leader. He not only forced himself on her but even gave her to his younger brother before his death. This brother in turn, gave her to another man during a banquet. She was passed on from tribe to tribe in Biancha, until eventually, she fled with me. We went through untold hardships to make it to Duan province. Luckily enough, her registration was still intact and the Yamen still had her missing person case open. She was leered at, and verbally abused, but we eventually returned to Deng province, where her younger brother took us in. The cussing of the merchants next door diminished. It was already late at night now. Sitting under the eaves, Haragu drank up that bowl of water and continued, "My mother was very happy, and she did much to supplement the family income. We stayed there for half a month. Then, one night, she was once again loaded into a carriage and sold to Duan province. Haragu's mother was wounded. It was a wound unseen, a wound called woman. She received training in the pleasure quarters in Duan province. There was no longer another way out for her. Being alive proved to be torture. Haragu could swear on his life that his mother was a harmless and kind woman. She met Bai Cha in Duan province. Haragu wanted to look at Shenzhequan, but having learned his lesson, he looked at Xiao Qiye instead. You would never have guessed that Bai Cha was the guardian spirit of the banks of the Hashi River. Qiang's continuous expansion of the establishment buildings was, in fact, Bai Cha's idea. Having gained the power to supplant Qiang, she set up a sufficiently strong network in Duan province to take in these women and children. Bai Cha did not fight alone. She merely took the lead in lifting that veil of curtain. They hid among the debauched scenes of carnal pleasure, contending with the unending night. This war was a soundless one fought in silence, one in which Bai Cha realized that acceptance was but a drop in the bucket. It was not easy to get registered in Duan province, and there was no garrison stationed outside the city. The sanctuary Bai Cha provided could not surmount all those obstacles either. She was a bird trapped in a vessel. Heaven would not help, but some people ought to pay the price. Haragu lifted his eyes and said. Slowly, and so Bai Cha set her sights on the bandits. She wanted the bandits to be the first in line to be punished. The Zhou clan was deeply involved with the bandits back then. Their backing was actually the reason the bandits were so lawless in Duan province. Lei Jing's mother was called Xiaoenli, who married into the Zhou clan of Duan province. She once tactfully persuaded her husband Zhu to send troops to suppress the bandits, but to no avail. That year, Shen Wei left Chu capital and the provincial administration commissioner of Zhongbo evacuated. Shen Wei was conferred as the prince of Jianxing, and Bai Cha decided to marry him. For many years after Shen Wei met Bai Cha, he could not be sure if that encounter had been intentional or coincidental. But Shen Wei's heart was already enraptured. He even splurged on thousands of gold before eventually winning the heart of the beauty and taking her home in his embrace. After Bai Cha married Shen Wei, Xiaoenli gave birth to Lei Jing. During Lei Jing's full-month celebration feast, Bai Cha went to have a talk with Xiaoenli, who subsequently put in another suggestion to her husband Zhu. This time, she told him that Shen Wei would soon start a thorough investigation in Zhongbo, and if her husband still wanted to remain an official, he had to cut off ties with the bandits immediately and make the first move against them. Not long afterward, Zhu submitted a document to Dun province and gave Shen Wei an account of every crime the bandits had committed in Dun province. He shoved all the blame onto the bandits and followed up with a request for Shen Wei to send troops over to wipe the bandits out. Shen Wei agreed. He needed to prove his usefulness to Chu capital. So, Tan Tai Long deployed his troops and joined forces with the Duan province garrison troops to fight their way across the Hashi River to destroy the bandits' trading grounds with the various tribes of Bianxia. But as I have mentioned earlier, the bandits had fallen in with the Liaoying tribe, and their remaining men temporarily retreated to the desert. The spies that the bandits left behind in the Duan province Yamen wanted to find out the reason behind Zhu's betrayal, and after several attempts of probing into it, they noticed Xiaoenli. Subsequently, she fell out of favor, and a mere few years later, she passed away from illness in the Zhou clan's inner courtyard. With that, Lei Jing fell out of favor, too. At this point, Haragu pointed at his neck. That's why I say that Lei Jing is our brother. The first time he came to Getal to look for us was to seek help. He probably knew what Xiaoenli had done, yet he still wished to become a bandit. He told me that he hoped we could join forces to get back at Zhongbo. He wanted to establish a new military force here and proclaim ourselves kings in Dun province and Duan province. After I rejected him, I assumed he gave up on the thought, but instead, he threw in his lot with Amuer. Shenzhequan repeated the same question, why did you say that Bai Cha split up Getal? After Amuer rose to prominence, he sought to maximize his resources to the fullest. He asked us to join him as the iron hammer that would oppose the Libai armored cavalry. Because of this, Bai Cha changed her mind. She wanted to reclaim all of Getal back into Great Zhou. At her behest, we resisted the Han Shi tribe's attempts to conscript us. We would no longer be their slaves. A group of us retreated to the side of the Hashi River to stand with Mother. Amuir refused to give up, but back then, Getal had already been torn in two. Haragu pointed at himself. The Zongbo faction led by me, and the Biancha faction led by Jida. Jida believed that there was no way to obtain land by relying solely on the strength of women, and we needed a place that could serve as a permanent residence for ourselves. On the other hand, I did not think that the people of Biancha would be open to reason. We still had to serve as slaves by following Amuir, and they would never give us bastards any cattle or sheep. In the end, we went our separate ways. But Bai Cha died. Shen Zequin recalled that particular dream, where Shen Wei's terrified face lay hidden behind the swinging bead curtains. He clenched his right hand again. This was the hand that killed Jida and Lei Zhengzhi. He swiftly weaved a web in his mind, connecting the dots that he had yet to completely figure out until now. Once Bai Cha was killed, Getal was as good as Amuir's. Shen Zequin looked back upon all that had happened in Chu capital in the beginning. And this was the real prelude to the defeat of the Zongbo troops. End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 180, Shen Wei. It was all dated back to the time during the reign of Emperor Guangcheng. Shen Zequin was of the opinion that the resurgence of the Yanji era brought about by Emperor Guangcheng had been Great Zhou's last hope. Although it had been short-lived, it had brought on an emerging wave of countless talents. The reign of Yanji was an era of the rise of wise and virtuous men. It was a period that signaled the revival of Great Zhou. At that time, Chu capital was ruled by a strong, decisive emperor who was at the peak of health. His civil officials included Qi Huilian and Hai Lianji, and his military generals counted Qi Xiu and Xiao Fangxiu amongst the lot of them. These virtuous men of superior capabilities had all followed a sovereign. All of them possessed the same dream, and the resurgence during the reign of Yanji was a ray of light, a glory that these people jointly created. Amuir, who was once an eagle slave, stood on the banks of the Hashi River and gazed across the turbulent river, where the Great Zhou he saw was an impregnable behemoth. The 12 tribes of Biancha were helpless when faced against such a Great Zhou. Their strongest Han Shi tribe was repeatedly beaten back by Xiao Fangxiu in the north. Once winter came around, cattle and sheep that had frozen to death were a common sight everywhere. At the beginning, Amuir led the Liaoying tribe to leave the banks of the Hashi River just to find a land where they could survive. His brothers all starved to death in the snowstorm. As the Liaoying tribe was small and weak, Amuir had no choice but to lead his tribe to live a vagrant life in the desert. While he was roaming around, he saw the mutually destructive infighting amongst the 12 tribes of Biancha. The Huiyan tribe, a small and weak tribe just like the Liaoying tribe, could not survive being trampled upon by the strong tribes, and so they left the desert and defected to Xiao Fangxiu. But Amuir had enough of shackles and fetters. He did not believe that the sacred falcons that the heaven bestowed upon them were born to be slaves. He did not want the mercy of the strong at all. He only wanted to stand on his own feet. Amuir rose to power in the desert. He was still an eagle slave when he defeated Sud of the Han Shi tribe and married Sud's younger sister, Serena. The next time Amuir faced up against Great Zhou again, his opponent was Xiao Fangxiu. Amuir came to the realization that the 12 tribes of Biancha had to be united like Great Zhou. He had to become the ruler of the desert and grow to be as powerful as Emperor Guangcheng, so he started to swallow up the other tribes. But the Libai armored cavalry had military supplies and equipment, and the construction of their iron wall proved to be an impregnable defense that prevented Amuir from penetrating deeper into the territory. In all those times he crossed swords with Xiao Fangxiu, he discovered that Emperor Guangcheng was already old, and Great Jiu was no longer as vibrant and flourishing as it had been a few years ago. It dawned on him that there was more than this one way to defeat Great Jiu. Getal proved to be an opportunity when he set his eyes back on the banks of the Hashi River, and Amuer decided to use the scorpions of Getal to dismantle Great Jiu's defenses. Bai Cha was the immovable force that stood in Amuer's way in Getal. But exactly what kind of method did Amuer employ to kill Bai Cha? Why do you people still want to live in Getal? Xiao Qi Ye propped up his arm. Given that Bai Cha had set up a safe haven in Duan province. Because of the implementation of the census registers. Shenzhequan thought of Qi Huilian. This was a brick wall. That's right. The majority of the women didn't have a household registration. During the times when Zhu colluded with the bandits, they reported many deaths in the name lists they sent to Chu capital in order to cancel out these women's records. Even if a small number of the women's families were still around, they would end up being sold away by their brothers at home, just like my mother. Harigu felt a little downcast. The courtesans led by Bai Cha were limited in their power, and to resolve the issue of the household registration, the majority of them married the general function staff of the Duan province Yamen. Bai Cha partitioned an area in the pleasure quarter as our residence and raised the children there. But as the number of people increased, it became extremely difficult to hide ourselves. The hardest part was children like me, whose appearances were so conspicuous that it was of no use even if we were to get the household registration papers. Unable to see the light in Duan province, we lived off the women's savings in the backyard of the courtesans' quarters. Later, the bandits were suppressed, and Getal gained a period of peace. It was at that time we returned to Getal. When Amuer was rallying the scorpions together, he promised to give us land, as well as cattle and sheep. Jida believed him. I couldn't stand up to the pursuit of the Biancha cavalry, so I could only return here once more. After Bai Cha's death, the courtesans continued to help us, but their strength was no longer what it had once been. I led my people to live on the outskirts of Duan province. A few years later, Amuer launched a surprise attack at the Hashi River's line of defense, and Zongbo no longer came under the jurisdiction of the Yamen. That was the time I entered Zongbo, where I lived until now. Harigu's mouth was parched from all that talking. Chen Yang poured him another bowl of water. Harigu said his thanks in a small voice and held up the bowl with both hands to drink it all up. The timing is just right. Xiao Qi looked at Shenzhequan. Amuer got his hands on the scorpions after Bai Cha's death and had them divided into black and white. The white scorpions passed him information from within Great Jiu, and the military defense map was just one of them. During the Xian era, Juexi was hit with a calamity and Hai Lianji traced the account books and called for Hua Saiqian to account for it. To make up for the state treasury's deficit, Hua Saiqian asked the officials from the noble clans who were in collusion with him for money. He didn't get it? Shenzhequan said with certainty. Hua Saiqian resold the Hua clan's fields and houses to Shi Hongxian during the third year of the Xian era precisely because he did not get the money he wanted from the noble clan officials. But the deficit was too huge a sum, and the Hua clan had no way of making up for it. Then the Zongbo troops' defeat happened. Xiao Qi frowned. The route taken by the Biancha cavalry in carrying out their surprise assault was deeply ingrained in Xiao Qi's memory. They once analyzed it back at the Plum Blossom residence. The destination of the Biancha cavalry back then had been Juexi. If there were white scorpions hiding amongst the noble clans, Amuer should have known that Juexi was already out of food at that time. Xiao Qi silently drew a couple of strokes on the ground. After a moment's pause, he continued, Juexi isn't easy to defend. It was a risk for Amuer's cavalry to invade deep into Great Jiu. The strength of the Biancha cavalry of that time was their use of resources obtained from the battles to sustain themselves in the war. They were incapable of defending the cities. If their goal was still Juexi, then this route is a straight path to their own demise. They would end up facing a three-way siege in Juexi. What if the officials from the noble clans who were involved in the military defeat case wanted Amuer dead? Shen Zequan covered up the military sketch Xiao Qiye drew and said out of the blue, there was no one to hold them in check, and Amuer couldn't control them. They wanted to treat Amuer like a dog the same way they did Shen Wei. They could have lured Amuer deeper into the territory than taken him out with the combined power of 3 armies. This would have completely turned the case of military defeat into a case of Shen Wei's collusion with the enemy. That would mean that the noble clans were not aware of the existence of the White Scorpions. Enlightened, Xiao Qiye tossed away the branch. They thought they could manipulate Amuer. Both parties had their own ulterior motives, and each had their own goals in this game. Perhaps Amuer had pretended to be a fool from Biancha, he did not reveal the card up his sleeve, and the noble clans did not even have a clue that there were White Scorpions amongst them. Amuer seized the opportunity and took advantage of the situation to ambush Zongbo. It was as he had originally planned. What he desired was not one instance of victory but to completely bring about Great Zhou's collapse from within. He succeeded. The Zongbo troops' defeat was a crucial node that signified the absolute end of the resurgence during the Yanji reign. Due to the Zongbo troops' defeat, Great Zhou underwent a radical change internally, starting from the 4th year of the Xian era. Hai Lianji thus embarked on the path of openly opposing the noble clans. Together with Xue Xiaozuo and the others, he launched an investigation into Huasaiqian for as long as 6 years. Li Bei was forced to send in Xiao Qiye as a hostage, thereby sowing the seed for the insurgency that would later go on to occur. The Empress Dowager also cleared out the imperial court during the reign of Emperor Guangcheng. With everyone deeply mired in internal strife, the Zongbo troops' defeat became the pebble that Amuer used to test the path ahead. Perhaps he had not expected Great Zhou's collapse to come about this soon, but this pebble hit right on target. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. We thought Shen Wei killed Bai Cha. Haragu piped up again in the solemn atmosphere. He was possibly influenced by the remaining bandits, who poisoned his mind until he saw Bai Cha as a spy from Biancha. Shen Zequan lowered his gaze to stare at his right hand in contemplation. If that's the case, Xiao Qiye said, then Shen Wei didn't collude with the enemy. Then, all his actions during the Xian era make no sense. There was no scouring Shen Wei's guilt clean, because he cowered back from battle and fled, then collaborated with his legitimate son, Shen Zhuji, to hold a banquet to strangle to death Tan Tai Long, who advocated for war. He did not only retreat but also asked the military officers and generals to do so along with him. The 6 prefectures had been handed over on a silver platter, and this was what Xiao Qiye despised most about Shen Wei. Why did Xiao Qiye try every means possible to take the remaining soldiers from the Zongbo garrison troops under his command when he later took over the imperial army? Precisely because it was too humiliating. These soldiers suffered the infamy of cowering away from battles. 40,000 people died in the Hashi sinkhole, yet they had no chance to fight back. It was with the thought of setting the Zongbo soldiers led by Tan Tai Hu back into Zongbo one day that Xiao Qiye took to heart what Tan Tai Hu had said that day. The humiliation of our nation has yet to be redressed, and the feuds of our families have yet to be avenged. He who has owned the debt shall collect it himself. Think about it the other way around. Shen Wei's face repeatedly appeared in Shen Zequan's mind. He muttered, it will make sense once it's reversed. Haragu did not understand what he meant. The voices from the merchants next door had already quietened down. In the momentary silence under the cold forbidding moonlight in the courtyard, Xiao Qiye raised his hands to drape the cloak over Shen Zequan's shoulders. Since the noble clans did not know of the existence of the White Scorpions, then they could only rely on their own abilities to contact Amuer. Shen Zequan gathered his cloak around him. And there are only 3 places where they could reach Amuer: Li Bei, the Bianjun Commandery, and Duan Province. I once interrogated Ji Lei back in Chu capital, and he said that Shen Wei was sent to Zongbo because the noble clans wanted him to intercept and sever the connections between Li Bei and Qidong. Perhaps he wasn't just sent there to play the watchdog but also to get in touch with the various tribes of Biancha on behalf of the noble clans. Haragu's blood ran cold as he said, then wouldn't that mean he married Baicha as a test? Shen Zequin swiftly organized his line of thought and said in a clear, methodical manner, Zhu gave the bandits free access in and out of Duan province as they pleased. Even the women of Deng province suffered greatly because of it, so it wouldn't stand to reason for there to be fewer victims in Dun province. Dun province and Duan province are so close to each other. It was impossible for Tan Tai Long to be in the dark about the bandits' selling of the women. Ever since I heard Haragu mention Zhu's forging of the household registrations, I've been harboring a guess. Zhu was merely a minor prefect at the frontier. How could he have the ability to alter the census registers far away in Chu capital? Zhu had backers and these people were not men Tan Tai Long could lay his hands on. Shen Wei came to Zongbo to conspire with Zhu, and he went to Duan province to investigate the network Baicha had concealed. This was also the part that had baffled Shen Zequin earlier. If Baicha had been able to pull the wool over Shen Wei's eyes, then it was implausible how the bandits in Dun province had been able to find out and trace it to her so easily. She married Shen Wei to put an end to the banditry, and Shen Wei's deployment of troops to eradicate the bandits had been to test Baicha. Before his death, Ji Lei had mentioned one thing. Shen Wei acted on the Empress Dowager's orders and colluded with Ji Lei to fabricate the Eastern Palace rebellion case. They killed the crown prince at the Temple of Penitence. Not long afterward, Shen Wei noticed the presence of spies all around his residence and there were always people moving around on the roof. He could not sleep at night because of this, thinking that the Empress Dowager wanted to get rid of him after he had outlived his usefulness. So, he bribed Pan Rugui with a huge sum of money and was subsequently sent to Zongbo. Shen Wei was afraid of death. He was already suspecting that the noble clans had treated him as a useless pawn to be discarded. For this reason, he went to Zongbo to seek a way out for himself in addition to helping the noble clans get in touch with the various tribes of Biancha. He wavered between the noble clans and Biancha, until Amuer appeared. Shen Zequin's eyes were dark. Shen Wei was the scorpion. End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 181, Cian. Shen Wei and Baicha were husband and wife for several years. They were strange bedfellows who shared the same bed but nursed different dreams and worked for different ends. At the same time, they were guessing who the other person really was. In those years, Shen Wei cautioned himself not to feel compassion. They had a son, and Baicha decided on Zequin from amongst the exquisite gems of names. They did as customs dictated and held a banquet, where not the slightest trace of killing intent could be found in their eyes when they looked at each other. It was as if they were really in love. Shen Wei was an illegitimate son born to a concubine. He endured plenty in the past but he eventually walked out of it to become the noble clan's blade. He thought he was sharp enough and to prove his loyalty, he even dared to kill the crown prince. But he soon discovered the futility of it, for he was destined to be cast aside once again. The noble clan's officials who were in power scorned him. He was just a nobody struggling on the other end of the natural chasm between them. Shen Wei would sometimes sit in the courtyard and watched Baicha play with their son under the eaves, and he would mistakenly think of themselves as a perfect match made in heaven living in conjugal bliss. There was a brief period when Shen Wei lost himself in the thought, because the expression in Baicha's eyes were too sincere. So sincere, he thought that he was the man Baicha admired and adored the most when she fixed that gaze upon him. But these were all shadows of the past, fleeting and ephemeral. Shen Wei would always acknowledge the fact that he was a scum. Shen Wei did not want to be a dog for the rest of his life, and Baicha was one of his chains. When Shen Wei was once again faced with the choices presented to him as he stood before the fork in the road in front of him, he hesitated for only a moment before ending her. He was a blade, who eventually stabbed himself bloody. Shen Zequan resembled Bai Cha so much that Shen Wei only wanted to kill him. They were not father and son. They were a testimony of an insignificant relationship. The incriminating evidence against Shen Wei was in Shen Zequan's eyes, and this made Shen Zequan's gaze on him too much for Shen Wei to bear. But Shen Wei did not kill off Shen Zequan, even though the thought of throwing Shen Zequan to the pack of wolves had crossed his mind countless times. Shen Zequan was the son of Shen Wei and Bai Cha. He had 2 strains of cold, detached blood coursing through his veins. For this, Shen Wei drank to his heart's content. He kept this son, then tossed this son out. He taught nothing of Shen Zequan. This was his revenge. Revenge against Bai Cha, and against Shen Wei himself. But, Chen Yang broke the silence and asked carefully, if Shen Wei became a scorpion before the military defeat, then why would he set himself on fire? He had already accomplished his mission when the Bianchi cavalry set foot in Dun province. His only chance of survival was to continue to follow Amuir east. Shen Zequan could not figure out why. This was also why he did not believe Ji Lei at first. He did not have the slightest bit of a clue as he did not understand Shen Wei. He could only say, I can't figure it out. If the Prince of Jiangxing's manor was still standing, we could perhaps find some clues from it. How many people do you have? Xiao Qiye asked Haragu. I can't tell. On seeing the expression in Xiao Qiye's eyes, Haragu deflated and said, 800. Only 800. There were initially over 1,000 in the past few years, but it isn't easy to spend life in hiding all over. Many of them left one after another. You hijacked Lei Jing's military supplies and equipment before. Shen Zequan said, but you sent them back. With the attention of the guards on him, Haragu slowly raised his hands and said innocently, I have no land. I live in a small alley in Dun province. These military equipment are too heavy for me to hide them. We only have 800 people. But this wasn't what the 800 of you thought when you hijacked the military supplies, Gu Jin thought. My mother said before, Haragu said in all seriousness, that things must always be returned to their rightful owner. These military gears didn't belong to me to begin with. Showing no mercy, Xiao Qiye casually exposed Haragu. Might as well say that things you have no idea how to use must be returned to their rightful owner. Haragu put on a that's exactly it expression. What did Yan Hero give you to make you go all out for him like this? As soon as Shen Zequan tilted his head, Xiao Qiye knew he was going to start negotiations. Haragu said in all sincerity, he's good looking. Shen Zequan found that this Bianchi scorpion was actually pretty good at putting on a mask. He appeared to be rather gullible and easily deceived, but in truth, he was a sly one. Shen Zequan asked, what do you want by throwing in your lot with me? Some promises, Haragu said. Having been on the receiving end of Bai Cha's kindness, I'm willing to trust you. For this reason, I'll give you one more chance. Shen Zequan held up his index finger and spoke in what could be said to be a gentle manner. After a moment of silence, Haragu honestly answered, I want land, a piece of land that people like me can call ours. What are you going to give me in exchange? Shen Zequan drawled. I'm not lacking these 800 people of yours. We are all people your mother left behind. Haragu said, you can regard us as elite soldiers. Bai Cha is Bai Cha. Shen Zequan said, I've never shown you and your people any kindness. Feelings can always be fostered. Having said that, Haragu raised his hands again and said solemnly to Xiao Qiye, I'm talking about feelings of gratitude. You're Bai Cha's son. For this reason alone, I'm willing to put myself at your disposal. If I were Yan Hiru, Shen Zequan said with biting sarcasm, I'd believe it. Haragu contended with Lei Jing in Dun province using the financial assistance that Yan Hiru rendered him. The reason he could remain alive was because he was smart enough, and smart people rarely brought old ties into the equation. They had their priorities all clearly worked out. If Dun province had not fallen into Shenzequan's hands this time, Harago would never have remembered Bai Cha. The person he had wanted to save on Fuxian Peak was Yan Hiru. Xiao Qi said with heartfelt sincerity, "My wife is so intelligent." Harago could only switch tactics. "You killed Lei Jingzhi and foiled Amuer's deployment in Zongbo. He will not give up on Zongbo easily. Soon, the cavalry will converge outside the city of Duan province. You have to quickly build up the city walls here. But Dun province has no garrison troops, so you can only deploy a portion from the Tse province garrison troops here. However, Tse province is also under threat from Chu capital. Therefore, you lack people, you lack troops. I do lack troops, but I have no lack of money." Shenzequan said, "My men will be stationed in Dun province. They will establish a new order here and swiftly reorganize the garrison troops. Can regular troops resist the elite forces of Biancha?" Harago asked, "Perhaps your husband has a better understanding." A dark light suddenly flashed in Xiao Qi's eyes, but he very naturally continued the conversation. "Hassan is leading the elite forces of Biancha on the battlefield in the north, and the forces in the south have to take on Qizuyan. Amuer doesn't have any remaining elite forces to deploy to Zongbo. That is merely a diversionary tactic." Harago responded with certainty. "It's not an easy fight on the southern front. Tianfei Watchtower and Suotian Pass have Qidong securely surrounded. Qizuyan can deploy 120,000 troops from the Bianjun commandery to fight the Biancha cavalry. As long as Qizuyan herself doesn't set foot out of Bianjun, there is no way the cavalry will be able to break through her defenses. Amuer's stretching of the battle line this far is simply a ploy to confuse the Libei cavalry. His goal is Zongbo." That was right, this was Xiao Qi's guess, too. Amuer established a unit of scorpions, yet he hid them here without immediately putting them to use on the northern battlefield. This was his scheme to catch his foes off guard. Lei Jingzhi's infiltration into Dun province was a ploy to occupy the area without any noise, as well as to allow the Biancha cavalry to swiftly ambush the Libei camps down south. Hassan would be swapped over. This was what Xiao Qi guessed. Hassan's departure from the battlegrounds in Libei would imply that the Scorpion unit had taken over his position. The Libei cavalry must think of a way to resist the iron hammers before this happened. Simultaneously, Shenzequan had to establish Zongbo's defenses before then, or they would all fall prey to the onslaught of attacks by Biancha. "Before I leave Dun province, I want to meet your 800 men." Shenzequan ended the night's discussion. "Then we'll discuss the other matters." Shenzequan rested his head against Xiao Qi's chest amidst the cool night breeze. The medicine on his right hand had been changed. Xiao Qi had bandaged it very carefully, and before they retired to bed, he had taken Shenzequan's wrist into his grasp. Neither of them spoke, it was as though they had both fallen asleep. Xiao Qi stroked the back of Shenzequan's head, staring at the ceiling as he mulled over matters. Shenzequan opened his eyes. "The profits Yan Hiru earned from grains in Zongbo are money made off the misery of others. We can get him to make reparations with the warm winter clothes that Libei is lacking this time. Are you planning to squeeze him dry?" Xiao Qi released his hand to cup Shenzequan's cheeks. He whispered, "Lanzo. The merchant's goods on this batch can be transported over to the mutual market in the winter to be traded with the Huiyan tribe." Shenzequan gazed at Xiao Qi, who was close enough to be within his reach. "Once winter comes, the trade route will be fully opened up. Then it looks like I'll have to wait until next year to get married to you." Xiao Qi laughed. "That's too long," Shenzequan replied softly. "I'll ask the Prince of Libei for your hand in marriage during the spring festival this year." They silently shared a kiss. Shenzequan sank into the crook of Xiao Qi's arms, and Xiao Qi turned over and lowered his head to press against him. Enveloped by that gaze of his, Shenzequan reached out with his fingers to caress Xiao Qi's cheek. With the case of the Zongbo troops' defeat unraveled, the primary issue Shen Zequan faced was not only the threat of the cavalry from the east but also how he should naturally progress to stand on his own feet under the stain of Shen Wei's name. As long as it was Shen Zequan's banner they were flying under, the Zongbo troops' defeat would remain a shackle. During my time in Duan province, I thought that if there ever came a day when I grew up, I would change my family name and take on Shifu's family name to become a Ji. Then I'd be a squad commander in Duan province, just like my big brother. Shen Zequan glided his fingers along gently, he was like the imprisoned moonlight as he lay there in Xiao Qiye's arms. But then, while at the Temple of Penitence, I came to the realization that I would still be Shen Wei's son even if I were to change my family name. With a face that bore a striking resemblance to Bai Cha, all traces of Shen Wei seemed to have been erased by his mother. But those traces lay concealed deep within him, manifesting into a different kind of insanity. If Shen Zequan had not met Qi Huilian after crawling out of Hashi sinkhole, perhaps he would be even more deranged. What his teacher had imparted to him was not only the Confucian classics, he had also bestowed upon him Lanzhou. Lanzhou had stepped out of Shen Wei's shadow. This was a part of him that genuinely belonged to Shen Zequan alone. This part allowed him to retain his sanity, preventing him from being destroyed and incinerated in all his battles with the nightmares of the Hashi sinkhole. It was precisely because of this that Xiao Qi Ye could succeed in keeping Shen Zequan under lock and become Shen Zequan's sheath. All I wanted to do as a child was to fly. Xiao Qi Ye flicked a finger at Shen Zequan's forehead. I wondered why Xiao Fangxiu was my father. He kept lifting us and tossing us into the air all day long, and he was so tall and so strong to boot. Shen Zequan started to laugh. They all say that I resemble my old man. Xiao Qi Ye looked at Shen Zequan. When I was sent to Chu capital, I thought it was a punishment, because I had once been complacent over it. There in Chu capital, I wanted to strip off the part of me that belonged to Libe. I didn't tell anyone this, but I hated the courtesy name Ce and then because it linked with Qi to fetter my talons and fangs. I drank the best of wines with Li Ji Unhung yet I couldn't sleep at night. Even with my eyes open, thoughts of the Hanjian mountains would still haunt me. That was a sort of restless torture. Xiao Qi Ye did not even know who he should hate during that period of time. He knew that his father and brother were not at fault, so he could only hate himself. When Shen Zequan looked at Xiao Qi Ye, he looked at Xiao Qi Ye as an untouchable reflection far beyond his reach. Yet when Xiao Qi Ye looked at Shen Zequan, he felt Shen Zequan was akin to an obtainable mirage of the moon in the water that lay right at his fingertips. Shen Zequan was the only who understood his pain. Those eyes of his alleviated the frustration that taunted him day in and day out. He had already been wanting to possess Shen Zequan since back then. You may be Shen Wei's son, Xiao Qi Ye whispered, but you're all mine. End chapter.